Is in every race on the planet, so it isn't racism, whatever else it is.
The political and the cultural elite seem to be ramping up their rhetoric on people like me. And what I say. Now, just this week, we've seen two journalists. We've seen an American journalist detained and held for days and deported because she was coming to interview me. We've seen a Canadian journalist who's just been refused entry and deported today as well. Where do you see this leading? Where do you see this where do you see the government response and the establishment response? Where do you see this heading?
Well, unless we can somehow start being allowed to talk about Islam, that's the first step. If we can talk about it and understand it, then we might get somewhere with persuading the people who treat you as they do, and I think it will get worse. And you have been a naughty boy, Tommy, in the past. You have quite often been a naughty boy. And so, in a way, then it's sort of made easier for them to demonise you. But anyone who read your book, Enemy of the State, I think would take a different view of you. Yeah. But they don't bother to read that. Of course they don't. Like this book out now from this wretched girl, which is called Please Let Me Go.
That's one of the great things.
Why don't they read that? Then they might understand something. But it's a sort of blanket establishment position that isn't going to look at anything smelly down there. That's what it is.
What do you think it's going to take for the people in Westminster to wake up to what's happening?
Well, they won't wake up until it's too late, because I think we're on our way to riots. I would have thought we're on with the frustration which is growing from principally the white working class, who've had to put up with all the discrimination against them, the schools, the housing lists, etc. I don't know, the police not arresting a Muslim man in a beard not on a handheld thing while driving a car. I mean, masses of it. They have to put up with that. But these people, we don't have to. We sit there in our gilded chamber and we couldn't give a damn. And so what I think it will, and I think it's pretty gloomy in the future if we can't start talking about Islam, and then it might spill over into the Muslim community and give them more of a chance of standing up against their violent co-religionists on the terrorist front, and the grooming gang lot on this front.
So if we don't see anything, if we don't see any change, if the government don't wake up, what do you see for the future?
Well, I see riots. Of course there'll be riots. I mean, if you look, today and I met them, and they're wonderful people. If you look at the veterans against terrorism and the football lads against terrorism, these are serious, real people. And they have marched. They have marched, I think 74,000 of them marched in London recently. It was an entirely peaceful march. They don't have racists, etc., etc., etc. But on one of them told me that on one of those marches there was a BBC camera crew and a Sky camera crew. And they said to the people in charge of the crew, well, this is really good. You're going to give us some coverage. And the BBC chap replied, well, we're not unless there's a riot. We've got to have friction, and so otherwise we're not going to cover it because it's just too boring. And this chap was very bright. Then he said to the BBC man, and I suppose if there is a riot and you cover it, if there is a fight, if a fight does break out, we will be guilty of hate crime. We, the martyrs. And the BBC said, you got it, mate.
You've got it. I was there. And the media, that's what I'd like to ask you. What do you see as the media? What do you see as their responsibility in what's currently happening? With regards to the British public, what I'd say is being deceived about what Islam is and the problems in our country, what role do you think the media have played in that?
Well, the media, I tend to focus on the sort of main channels, and I do quite a lot of work on the BBC's coverage of Brexit, which is a scandal, because the chairman and director general of the BBC cannot send me and my little group of cross-party MPs, they cannot send us the transcript of a single BBC programme since the referendum, which has examined the opportunities of Brexit. Not promoted, I think, just examined. They can't do it. There isn't one. There isn't one. The BBC is the Guardian newspaper of the airwaves, really. That's what it is. And so what do I see the media doing? The media at the moment, the BBC, there's absolutely no hope at all. we haven't got a Fox television here or something of that kind. And so I don't think, do we?
It's funny you say that, because that's actually what I want to launch into now. We want to become a media brand, the alternative media brand for the UK and for Europe, to give people the truth, to bring them the facts.
Well, at least to give them the opportunity to talk about it and decide for themselves, instead of being told that these people who are making your life such a misery and blowing us up all over the place, these are peaceful people and Islam is not the cause of it. What I want to go into and have a look at Islam and say, to what extent is Islam the cause of it? I don't see how you could say. And even the Archbishop of Canterbury, bless him, in France, the September before last, and to a meeting of schools in this country, the Archbishop of Canterbury did actually say, we will never deal with Islamism and come with Islamism unless we understand Islam. He said it is very unhelpful if we go on pretending that ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. And he also said it's time for our religious leaders to stand up and be counted. Now,